Okay, let's talk about the 3 causes of negligent discharges. Right now, you know, the root cause, magazine out, gun cleared and checked, so this is empty gun. The root cause is always going to be, you know, your booger hook on your bang button, because you can load this gun up, you can sit in the corner, it'll be there for 1,000 years and won't go off. Right? Something has to manipulate that trigger, right? And barring a stick or a part of your holster or something, you know, getting in here, you know, almost all negligent discharge is going to be caused by somebody had their finger on the trigger when they didn't mean to, and that trigger finger, you know, manipulated that trigger and it went off, right? So, you know, there's 3 things that cause that to happen. And they are the startle response, the stumble response, and the sympathetic grip, right? And so let's talk about what they are. Okay, so, you know, if you've ever been a little bit more immature, you know, and maturity comes over time, and I wouldn't do this now, but back when I was more immature, say Tuesday, right? You know, I'm hiding in the corner, the wife comes by, it's dark, I jump out, boo, I scare her, you know, and she jumps. Well, you know, we know that fear and anger are biologically linked, so if you scare somebody, you tick them off, so she's going to slap me a bunch, say, oh, I can't believe you did that. But before she did that, she's got to have a startle response. And what's going to happen is, you jump out, you scare somebody, what are they going to do? They're going to go, ah, right? And they're going to hunch their neck, they're going to bring their hands up, they're going to make a fist, because their hindbrain, their primitive brain says, I'm about to be in a fight, let's gear up for a fight. And because of this, a guy named Tony Blair came up with the spear system. And, you know, he's basically said, you know, if this is how your body reacts when you're startled, then why don't you learn to fight that way? And I'm not a spear instructor, so I'm not going to talk about that. But you really ought to look up the spear system, S-P-E-A-R, Tony Blair. He's a mixed martial artist out of Canada. Really cool stuff. But anyway, so if you get scared and you make a fist, what happens if you get scared and you're walking around with your finger on the trigger of the gun? Let's say, you know, it's 2 in the morning and your wife hears a noise and she gets you up and you're clearing your house, which I don't recommend that you do that, and we'll do a video on that one of these days. But I'm clearing the house and my finger's on the trigger and I'm going and dude jumps out, there he is, you know, and bam, I've had a negligent discharge, right? Because the gun has went off and I did not mean for it to, right? Or, you know, I'm holding a guy at gunpoint, he's in the house, you know, get down, stay down, I've called the police and my finger's on the trigger, and he gets up, you know, and he comes at me, and then, you know, that startles me, I back up, you know, my finger compresses, and then I've shot him, right? And you know, my finger's on the trigger, I've had pointed the gun at him, you know, the DA's not going to take, well, he scared me, and the gun accidentally went off, right? Because your finger was on the trigger, that meant you meant to do it, right? And so, you know, the way that we deal with the startle response is we keep our finger off the trigger, because if we do have that startle response and we do get scared and we make that fist, all that finger's going to do is push the muzzle of the barrel. Or if we're in the C position, it's just going to tighten up on the gun, right? So the way we deal with the startle response, we keep our finger off the trigger, right? And the next one is the stumble response, also called the imbalance discharge. And this happens to me all the time because I'm fat and clumsy, whatever, and I'm walking around and I trip and I stumble. What do? You splay your hands out to try to catch yourself, right? You know, if you fall off a ladder, you reach for the ladder, right? So that's, once again, that's one of those automatic nervous system responses. It doesn't go, you know, through your nerves, up your spinal cord, into your brain, and you think about it. It's not a OODA loop thing. It comes up, you know, and then the brain just says, do it, and it comes back down. So it's a lot quicker. And so anything that touches your palms, when you're in a stumble response, your brain says, and it's not thinking about it. It's not processing, that's a gun, you know, or a rope, or a ladder, or, you know, a pencil, right? It's not processing where it's connecting anything. It's just processing. Something's in my hand, I'm going to tighten up on it, and maybe that'll stop me from falling. So if I have my hand on the gun and my finger on the trigger and I stumble, well, guess what? Something's touching the palm of my hand. So I'm going to have a negligent discharge, right? So, once again, finger off the trigger, right? along the frame of the gun or in the seat position, depending on you know who you are, how you work it. And so if I'm walking around and I stumble, nothing happens. Finger on the trigger, I'm walking around, I stumble, and I've had a negligent discharge, right? The next one, the third one, is called the sympathetic muscle response, or an interlimb reaction, depending on whether you're trying to be smart or you're just trying to get your point across, right? And this one works because we're wired in stereo. 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 hands, right? And if we do a major gross motor move with one body part, we're going to do it with the other. You know, you're not going to, you know, listen intently without both of your ears listening intently, right? And this happens more with law enforcement or security, people that are, you know, they're going to hold a guy at gunpoint and then they're going to go cuff him up, right? It doesn't happen as much with citizens, and it doesn't happen as much now because trainers are educating, you know, their guys on this. But, you know, we've got a guy, you know, get on the ground, he's on the ground. We go down there, we get on top of him, you know, we go to handcuff him, we grab his arm, right? Get ready to cuff him up. And he pulls away. Well, if somebody pulls away, you're getting ready to you know, tie him up or handcuff him or whatever. Pull away, what are you going to do? You're going to pull back, right? So, got your hand on him, he fights, you're going to tighten your hand up and jerk him around so you can get him under control, right? So if your finger's on the trigger and you're pointing at the back of his head and your hand's on his hands and he fights and you tighten up, well, as you tighten up with one hand, you tighten up with the other hand. Sympathetic response, that interlimb reaction. So what happens? Then you shoot him in the back of the head. Now, granted, he's not going to fight anymore, but, you know, that's not going to be justified, and you're probably going to go to jail, right? Or, well, who knows? Nowadays, cops are busting people's houses, shooting them, and then the homeowner's going to jail. I don't know. But anyway, it's still not justified, right? So what do? Finger straight along the frame or in the C position, right? That's good, right? But better than that, you see it now, you get the guy on the ground, you go to handcuff him up, what do? They put their gun back in their holster and then they use both hands, because both hands are a lot better than one hand if you're going to be fighting with somebody. You know, I'm going to fight you one hand behind my back. Well, shoot. You know, I'm going to fight you with everybody I've got if I've got a choice. So, you know, basically, the best thing to do, always keep your fingers straight and off the trigger. But, you know, figure out why you're doing what you're doing, and then that's going to allow you to come up with better solutions, right? You know, we're not into rote learning because I said so. We want you to know why you're doing what you're doing, right? Because you know, that will serve you in all situations. So there you go. I hope that's useful. Please comment. You know, if you've got your own experiences, I'd be more than willing to listen, and maybe I can learn something from you. So thank you very much. Until next time, you can catch us online, www.teamgun.com.